show of hands, how many of y'all are or would like to be animators? That's awesome. You came from the right place. So we're going to be talking about just the basics of animation today. Everything that you need to know to get started, and everything that you should know about how to be really good at it, according to me anyway. I didn't draw that. I wish I drew that. That's a gift from one of my favorite anime series, very long on my stream. They were Gainax, but now they're triggered. And I thought while I was creating this presentation, and I wanted to be educational, I was like, okay, I guess I gotta pull from textbook stuff. Wait a minute, no, this is an anime convention. We're gonna talk about this with anime. Best decision I've ever made. So let's get started. What are we gonna be talking about today? Let me know if I'm walking around too much. You can barely see me. So we're gonna begin our animation journey from the ground up, as I did about a decade ago, actually. I started learning animation in 2015, so I've been doing this for a little while now. And I think I'm still a pretty well-adjusted person after all of that, so you can still be too. So what are we going to learn? We're going to learn about what's called the 12 principles of animation, which are just the things that you should know about animation that makes it what it is. As well as stages of the animation process. Basically, animation is done with iteration, right? You build things on top of each other to create animation step by step. It's not just one fluid linear process. We'll learn more about that in a second. Tips and tricks for drawing. The essential tools that you might need for animation. So you don't really actually need that much, but you can go as advanced as you might want. And also just valuable resources you might want or need to inspire you. So let's do the best, most fun part first. Here's the 12 principles of animation, or as I've come to call them, SAS, FAS, TESSA. That's an acronym that I made up. Nobody else calls it that. I'm a complete fraud. So what does that mean? What is SAS, FAS, TESSA? So here's the acronym all laid out for everyone. Come on in, there's still some room. You're not too late yet. It's so great to actually so many of you here. Again, forgive my sniffing, I do that a lot. So SAS, FAS, TESSA includes squash and stretch. I'll see what I can do. Squash and stretch. Anticipation. Staging, as in what's around me. Straight ahead action versus pose to pose action. Follow through and overlapping action. Arcs. Slow in and slow out. Secondary action, which I can't figure out a way to illustrate that with my body, but we'll get there. Timing and spacing. Exaggeration. Solid drawing. I'm not a drawing, I'm a real person, but you get it. And appeal. I'm a pretty handsome guy, I think I'm pretty appealing. So, squash and stretch. We're going to go by these one by one. So, what is squash and stretch? Well, everything in animation just kind of looks better whenever you can really deform an object. Because that happens in real life all the time, believe it or not. If you slap somebody in the face, don't do that. But if that were to happen, then their face is going to contort. And in animation, the most appealing animations come when you really utilize that squash and stretch. You'll see it all the time in Disney movies, and even rarely in some cases, like in this Mob Psycho example, in anime. Anticipation, what is that? Anticipation is, well, in animation, an action doesn't just happen. I'm not just going to walk to the other side on here, right? Notice what I did first. I kind of did this with my body, and then I walked over here. Anticipation is a movement that kind of telegraphs what the main movement is going to be. And in this case, when Akko here, when she's about to fire the little wand spell thing at the big monster, she kind of flails around and is she brings her wand down and goes, yeah, right? Her doing that is what kind of sells the big motion. It makes it more powerful. So clever and creative use of anticipation in animation is extremely valuable. Staging. So this is less of what goes on with the character and more of what goes on around them, how the scene is set up, creating interesting shot compositions. It's a piece of filmmaking no matter what kind of film that you are making. So it's just as important in animation. So in this Sonic example, I'm a huge Sonic fan, by the way. You should all know that about me. In this Sonic example, this is a very interesting use of staging because we see in perspective, Sonic is moving backwards, avoiding all these things. You see him jump around different parts of the screen. It's an interesting use of staging, but shot composition, it's not just a boring flat shot where, let's say, he's just standing in the center of the screen and nothing else is happening around him. A huge part of this art form is just doing solid filmmaking choices. Moving on. Straight ahead action versus pose to pose. This is a hard one to describe to people who have not been animating for a little while already, but I'll do the best I can. In fact, we'll learn more about what makes this so special later on in the presentation. But there are two approaches you can kind of take when animating, depending on what scene you're doing. Most animation is like this example on the right. It's pose to pose, where usually animators will draw the most important poses in a motion first. So let's say I'm running. You got the first pose of me running, and then the second pose of me running. You draw those first, and then everything in between, you draw those after. Because you kind of plan for that, right? But in some cases, an animator will just kind of let the motion flow through their mind as they draw, and they will literally draw the sequence back to back to back to back without, in the precise order. Think of it like how stop motion animation works, where you have to do it that way. So in this example, both of these examples from Evangelion, this one was done pose to pose, at least I assume that it was, where each key pose of the run that Unit 2 is doing was drawn first, and the in-between drawings were done after, and then, reordered. In this example, though, the animator did straight ahead, and as a result of that, it looks like a more weighty, human motion that's more naturalistic and not quite as exaggerated, because they wanted to sell the idea that this is a really brutal scene. It isn't meant to be stylish or cool or it's something really scary is happening right now. It can be kind of unsettling. And using an animation technique like that is good for such a thing. Follow through and overlapping action. So what that basically means is anything that is on a character that is going to move in somewhat offset from the character themselves. In this example, this is Noriko from Gunbuster, and as you can see, her hair and nothing else is independently of her body as she walks. So having things like that, with just her hair moving kind of offset, even at the very end when she turns around, that allows for something more interesting, and everything we're moving at the same rate all the time. It wouldn't be as cool, right? So having these features on a character, even like my shirt, anything like that when I move around, capturing that just nuance of real life and exaggerating it in animation, again, it just always makes everything look so much better. Arcs. So in this one, we see arcs basically is you want a lot of your movements when you draw animation, or if you're doing 3D, when you're making 3D animation, you want most of your movements to be readable in a circular, elliptical kind of way. Because when you're looking at a flat screen, that's just the easiest thing to read when you see it. So the more you can get into the habit of not moving things in a straight line, but moving things in some kind of curve when you animate, that is also very beneficial. So in this example, you see this character, she throws the gadget. I have not seen this show, but it's a cool looking show. I should watch it sometime. She throws the gadget with her arm, going on an arc like this. And then what does she do? She turns around and her head that's in a circle also. Extremely good animation. I love this. I gotta watch this show. It's called Denno Foil. My friend Ned Monty showed it to me, or this kid anyway. Slow in and slow out. I hate that I spoil what this is. Hold on, check this out. You would have never known he was going to walk into frame if I didn't tell you in the credit right there. Because this doesn't look anything like Naruto. But in this Naruto movie, we're not focusing on him, we're focusing on the guy who's walking. Notice his hand slows down as it goes back, speeds up, slows down as it goes forward. In animation, we have these things called timing charts, which let us know like the spacing of like how far apart a drawing is going to be, like, you know, from the previous one to, you know, create a sense of, right? Instead of just, like, you know, not something robotic, right? I hope I'm explaining that well. Just more fluidity. Secondary action. This is probably the most difficult one to describe for me personally, but it basically just means a character is doing one thing that's a bit smaller and not as prioritized while the main thing is still happening. So what is the main thing happening here? Well, this character is running up the stairs, right? But look at all this stuff she's doing in the meantime. She is like throwing her hat off, throwing her jacket off. Those are like their own well-considered parts of animation that need to be thought through all on their own, let alone while she's running up the stairs. So whoever animated this was clearly very skilled and did a good job of understanding how to manage both of those at the same time. So yeah, secondary action is essentially just making sure, like, or the act of making something happen that's a bit smaller than the main thing that's happening. So it feels more real, it feels more human. Timing and spacing. This kind of goes into what I was talking about with ease in and ease out, but this also, I'm using this as a comedic example of things either slowing down or speeding up to sell some kind of effect, whether it's like impactful or in this case, funny. This is a show called Golden Boy, and I highly recommend it. Don't watch this with your parents. I chose the most safe for work possible example of a GIF from this show to show its comedy and how it does comedy. How a lot of what he's doing, it alternates between being slower movements and faster movements, and then whenever, you know, that all goes down, you know, the broom slowly comes into frame and hits him, and that quickly comes in and hits him. So variations in the speed of different things allows for more interesting animation. Exaggeration. So what's really cool about this art form, this might be my favorite one, and therefore I've used a GIF from my favorite anime to describe this one. Animation is not real life. You can do whatever you can mimic real life, and it's better if you can, but the point of animation is to make real life just look more appealing, look more, what is a synonym for exaggeration? You get it. Just making things look more outlandish than they already are. If something is crazy already, make it even crazier. Like, no facial expression that I could make in real life would look as insane or as pushed as something that you could draw. So when people draw, they go the extra mile, especially for comedic effect, like here. Like, if I'm gonna like breathe heavily, I'll just be like, right? This guy's like, right? And that's cool. It's like, oh, it's fun, right? Or even with a punch, whenever he like punches a big hand, it's like, oh, right? Nobody would do that in real life, but it's more fun that way. That's what it's all about, is making things look more fun. I'm gonna do it on time. Wow. We're moving through this pretty fast. This is good though. So, solid drawing. Most of this just comes from understanding drawing in and of itself, as well as human anatomy, or animal anatomy, or whatever it is that you're drawing. This especially applies in 2D. It could work in 3D as well, but especially in 2D. If you can make it look convincing that the character you're drawing is something that exists in a world of some kind, even if it's not exactly tangible, there's a difference between something being a drawing and something just looking flat. Obviously, like a more flat, like geometric art style, that's valid, those do exist. But if you can make something look like it could exist in 3 dimensions, even if it's not, that's an amazing illusion to give. And I use this example with Cammy, as you can see, when her legs are in motion, it almost looks like that's rotoscoped from a real person. It's not. At least I don't think it was. I just think this is really impressive. The Street Fighter 2 movie is one of my favorite just pieces of inspiration because it features human anatomy being drawn and animated and pushed in such impressive ways that I just don't see anymore in that industry. And if anybody has any examples of that still being done today, let me know, because I love seeing it. Appeal. Animation just looks cool. That's all it really is. If you can draw something that looks neat, that's probably most important. And I think this example showcases everything that animation can be. It can look cool, it can look cute, it can look stylish, it can look like rough and hard-edged. There can be some softness to it. I think all of those can be seen here depending on your tastes. And these drawings are just all really solid too. I don't know, this is such an appealing gift to me. Appeal is probably the most vague and abstract of the principles that I can really say, but it all just comes down to, is this aesthetically pleasing? Or, you know, if you decide that your art style, or the art style of the thing that you're working on, is intentionally not aesthetically pleasing, how do you make that look intentional? How do you make it look like this ugly drawing was intentionally made to look ugly in a skillful way, if that makes sense? And I think that's all of them. Yeah, see, now you guys are all experts. You can leave now. This is an animation that I did. Other character who was on a TV. It was a parody of a ghost hunting show within the show itself. And this is meant to show 3 key stages in the animation process that we kind of touched on earlier. The first thing that you'll draw is the key poses when we're doing 2D and 3D as well. The first thing that you'll plan out. These are the main, most important drawings that give the most information about what the character is doing. And they're usually based on the storyboards that are provided before the animation process even begins. So, with this example up here, you know, I don't animate her necessarily walking into frame. I animate like each basic step that she makes. And then when she turns around, but you know, she snaps into those poses. So then, whenever that's all done and that's been approved, we go on to a step called breakdowns. Breakdowns give you a little bit more information about how we're getting to each key pose. They add context. They're sort of a halfway point in some cases. So now we see what happens to get her from one step to the next, as well as the speed in which she turns around. So now this shot is perfectly primed for in-betweens, which simply exists to, finish out that motion, to put it on average, 12 drawings per second. In 3D, it's still about 24 individual frames. In 2D, it's usually 12 drawings per second, meaning that every drawing is on screen for about 2 frames, or exactly 2 frames. What am I talking about? Exactly 2 frames out of the 24 frames per second that animation makes up. Sometimes we cheat. Sometimes a drawing will be on screen for 1 frame if we want to really sell how fast a motion can be. Sometimes drawings will be on screen for 3 frames to kind of emphasize something slower that's happening. Western animation is almost always on 2s by default, and anime is most often done on 3s, sometimes even 4s if they're going really slow. I like this animation a lot, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but
no, it's good.
Thank you. But I think it's a good example to go
Both of you is wonderful.
Here's some more animation that I worked on. You'd be surprised how many steps can also go into this, depending on how demanding a shot is. Because it's a difficult art form, and sometimes you got to go through up to 6 iterations to get it just right. So let's break this down. Apologies for the spoilers if y'all have not seen this episode of Hell of a Boss, but this happens, and it's pretty cool. So the first step are the storyboards, which when I worked on Hell of a Boss, we based our drawings very heavily on what are in the storyboards already. And then moving on from there, an acquaintance of mine, Greg McMahon, otherwise known as Gregzilla, he did an extremely rough, sketchy thumbnail version of what the animation was going to be for this sequence. And then he started doing some breakdowns and a few in-betweens in that third example. And then suddenly, for reasons that were personal to him and also for the sake of the schedule, he had to drop the shot. What's going to happen? It's not going to get finished now. And then I came to the rescue. My animation director at the time asked me, can you take what Greg has currently made and finish it? So I then took what Greg was working on and made solidified, tied down versions of those drawings. And these are now the final key poses. I then added some breakdowns, some of which are incomplete here in this example, just because of the very scatterbrained nature in which I personally work. But then you get to the very end and it looks like that. So we came all the way from this to this, and it took a very long time. I'm very proud of how this came out as well. This was actually the very last animation that I was working on before I was asked to be promoted to lead animator on Hell of a Boss. So I feel like I really flexed with this and it paid off. But that's enough about me. Let's talk about y'all. What do you need to start animating? Let's say, all right, Brian, cool, I know how to do this now. What do I need to get started? Not much, actually. You can really, if you really want to, just get started immediately, and you don't really have a lot of cash or access to tech, you can just whip out some hole-punched paper, pencil, and some kind of light source, something to keep that paper held down, just like they did in the old days at Disney, and just like they actually still do overseas in countries like South Korea and Japan. They still use paper to do the preliminary animation over there. I couldn't find a really fun, really good photo of that, so I represented it with this drawing of that happening from an anime called J-Popcon. Pretty cool show. It kind of goes into the process. It's very meta. It's an anime about making anime. I find that to be a lot of fun, so check it out if you get the chance. But if you aren't financially inclined to do so, I'd also recommend getting some kind of pen, tablet, or screen display that you can use digital programs with. There's so many of them out there. The market allows for entry-level ones that are not really all that expensive at all, but it goes all the way up to things that are super professional industry-grade stuff. So it just depends on what you have access to. It's all valid. Your tech does not make you better, necessarily. You just get used to the tech with whatever you've got, and it just adds for the convenience. So yeah, whatever you can use, go for it. And when it comes to softwares you might want to use for those displays, this is where it gets a little tricky, and you're going to need some money for these in some cases. The cheapest one is Clip Studio Paint. EX, not the regular version, but EX has incredible animation tools that the anime studios actually use professionally. I don't use it much. I've used it before, and it's pretty cool. But it's good for learning a traditional approach to animation without all of the cheat codes and shortcuts that other softwares will get you. So it goes on sale all the time. If you don't have Clip Studio Paint, I recommend you get it. Not only as an animation tool, but as a drawing tool. I use it for all of my illustrations, which you can see at my Artist Alley booth. Then there's Adobe Animate. This sucks, don't use it. I'm kidding. Or am I? Some professional productions use this, usually because we're in an age now where Flash animators grew up and they just let their pipeline continue into their professional lives. So some studios that I've worked with still use Adobe Animate. I hate it. I'm full disclosure on that. I hate using that program. But it is something that professionals use, so it would be an advantage for you to at least know a little bit about how to use it if you're interested in working in the industry, or if you just already have access to Adobe products and it's just there for you already. It's a good thing to learn. My favorite is the one that is the most gate-kept, and I'm so sorry about that, but it's Toon Boom Harmony. That is what most big productions use these days. They have access to vector tools that allow you to basically drag individual lines around and morph them and create puppeted bone rigs of characters. that move around. A lot of what you see with like 2D rigged animation comes from that program, if not earlier versions of Flash. It can do just about everything. We make hell of a boss in that program. I love it, but it is incredibly expensive. So if you're interested in using it, do a free trial first and see how you feel. Or if you really know, hey, you're about to get your first job and you need to learn how to use this thing, that would be the time to do it. But if you're just starting out as a hobbyist, Clip Studio Paint, that's what you want. When you're just starting to animate, what you want to start practicing by doing is just drawing. Because to be a good artist of any kind, you need to know how to draw. You need to learn fundamentals, and you can't just boil it yourself down to, it's my style, though. You'll develop a style, I promise. You just have to take your time learning how the real world works, and the more perspective you have for that, the better that your animation is going to look. The more appealing the characters you draw are going to look. Even though we're just making cartoons, an understanding of real life goes a long way toward making those cartoons look the best that they can. So this is an example. I drew this. I actually drew it digitally, but I used brushes that mimic real pencils to do it, because they teach you all about figure drawing in school. I went to an animation program called SCAD whenever I was in college, and we drew stuff like this all the time, like artist models who would come in. We'd draw them live on like big pads and like sketchbooks and stuff. And it's like, this is like it's a chore, right? But it doesn't have to be. It can be really fun if you draw what you enjoy drawing. Go to an environment that is fun to be in, like a park, or if you go to any kind of social event, bring a sketchbook with you. Draw this. I hate doing this, but it's still good for you. Draw environments around you to learn how perspective works, how things work whenever they get closer and far away from you. Just developing an eye for that sort of thing. That matters so much. This is just my personal cheat code. If you see somebody that you think looks nice, draw them. Because we always enjoy and are better at drawing the things that are aesthetically pleasing to us. What can you use for inspiration? How are we doing on time? Very good. I'm almost done, so there's going to be plenty of time for questions. I like that. What can you use for inspiration? Well, first, I'm going to give you guys some homework. The Animator Survival Kit by Richard Williams, God rest his soul, is the animation tutorial book that every established program and course just worships when it comes to this stuff. You need this book. That is an objective fact. It teaches all of those animation principles in a way that isn't just stumbling over their words all the time and just being an anime freak like I have been for the past 30 minutes. It does it in a much more scholarly sort of way that I recommend reading through. And then when it comes to the more fun stuff, collect art books for stuff that you like. Study the drawings in those art books. And the construction of them. If those art books have preliminary concept art and sketches in them, even better. Obviously we all have things that inspire us, that made us say, I want to do something like that. So go to the source. Do not, by any means, pick up a how to draw blank book. Don't do that. Pick up a how to draw book in general to learn how to draw anything you want, and then pick up the things of the style that you like those actual things, and be all right, now I can study this thing in a way that is more well-informed, and then I can really take something from. So I'm not just painting by numbers or just going by a step-by-step process of what some cheap guidebook from the hobby store is telling you. One last piece of homework: buy books about anatomy. The more resources like that about drawing things in real life that you have, the better. I've also been recommended the Living Lines library if you're studying animation specifically. There's a lot of, like those GIFs I was just showing earlier, of all this stuff. You'll see things like that for a lot of Western animation from old Disney animators. And there'll be pencil tests that aren't even finished yet. There'll be the pencil drawings scanned in. And it's so interesting to see that, how those are constructed. It's like I themed a lot of this presentation around the Japanese side of things because it felt thematically appropriate, and I'm a big weeb. That's why I never wanted to do stuff like this to begin with. But studying from those masters at Disney and DreamWorks and whoever else, also very important. And maybe one day I'll, I don't have it in this presentation, but one day I might speak more on how to do things like limited animation, how to do more with less drawings, because every TV show that you've ever seen uses limited animation in some way, where obviously not everything can be a drawing every 2 frames that's completely unique. We have to cheat sometimes. We have to move things around. We have to find as many shortcuts as we can. But yeah. All right, so what have we all learned today? Well, we've got the 12 principles down. You guys are all masters with those. You've memorized all of them now. I know you have. Yes, Tessa, gotcha. Practicing anatomy, drawing from real-life references, building your animation through multiple passes, and not just one drawing in sequence after another, even though that is the final product. You plan out the animation through key poses, breakdown poses, and then smoothing them out with the in-betweens. Use whatever tools you have access to. It doesn't matter. You can use paper, you can use digital stuff, you can use whatever tier of digital stuff you can afford. Do research on that, and you'll do great. You won't be amazing at it immediately. As long as you keep trying, keep practicing, you'll succeed. Get that animator survival kit. Please do it. And other resources that inspire you personally. And just keep going. I believe in all of y'all. I wish I could see all of y'all's drawings right now. All of them, this is so unscripted and off the cuff for me, but to see this many people show up for this it warms my heart, because the animation industry is an incredibly difficult one, not only to get into, but to sustain yourself in. It's competitive, it's cutthroat, working conditions vary across all the different studios and parts of the industry depending on where you live. And who you're working for, so many different variables, to the point where it is an art form that some people who are interested in it might give up on it too soon. So to see this many people in person who are this interested in the art form to learn more about it from someone like me, that is amazing. And I'm going to cherish this memory and seeing all of y'all forever, right? So thank you all. And with that, I open it all up. Does anybody have any questions? Yo!
Yeah. If we go back to the arms, you're talking about on the slide.
Yeah.
Because in that illustration, you can see that the girl is the way she's throwing it. You can see it doesn't have that many in-between animation, in-between frames.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, how much can you get away with cutting off the frames to, for example, save time on the animation itself in the end?
Yeah, so that just depends on what style you're working with. I mentioned before, anime kind of runs on a lower frame rate, usually about a drawing every 3 or 4 frames as opposed to 1 or 2. That's already one thing. But having a style that lends itself to snappier, faster movements, that is a core tenet of limited animation. Is snappier movements that get you from one pose to the next. Shows like Gumball on Cartoon Network do that a lot. A lot of anime do it, a lot of the works of Studio Trigger do that, where they'll focus on here's one drawing that's really cool, and then bam, here's the next drawing that's really cool. Instead of really, slowly getting you there, because it gives you a different feeling, right? If you want that snappy feeling, go for it, and that will save you time. So it depends on the style, and it's not real life. You can get away with anything. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, that's it. Thanks.
Yo.
This is not particularly a question.
Yeah.
It's more so just like feedback. I really appreciated the fact you had so many examples.
Yeah.
It really made it a lot easier to understand. And also, your energy is very nice.
Thank you so much. This is my first time presenting like this, so I'm doing my best. Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, when I first was starting to plan out this presentation, I was going to, I went on Google, because I was kind of in a rush to make it, not going to lie, but I went on Google to look at examples that I've seen in textbooks of these. And I was like, this is so boring. Like, I need to find like a real way to do this, right? And all right, real peek behind the curtain. This is what changed everything. I was talking to a friend on Discord whenever I was making this, and I was like, dude, I want to put an anime boom jingle somewhere. I really want. I know. And I want to do it though, because that is the perfect example of overlapping action. It just is. And he was like, well, while you're at it, just make the examples anime gifs. Brilliant, genius, I love it. So that is how that friend of mine, that I won't name right now, he is the savior of this entire project. All right, thank you for that. Hello.
Yes, what was your way into animation, both personally but also education-wise? In Denmark, we have a very big community for the animation workshop, for example. So I know there's a lot of people looking into education, also with animating.
Education, that's what you said?
Yeah, education, and also just your personal, like, what's got you started.
Oh, so like, when did I learn animation and what got me started?
Yeah, like you don't did you draw comics first, or like how did you start?
I like that question. One sec. All right. This is what made me want to animate. Gurren Lagann is a show that I recommend to everyone because, you know, this like energy that I have, this like sense of optimism that I present, that is a lifestyle and an attitude that I learned from the mighty Kamina from Gurren Lagann, because he's just a go-getter and he inspires those around him to just be like proactive about everything. So it was a message that I love from the show's content, but also the animation from the show exhibits every one of the principles that I just described in a way that appealed specifically to my nerd brain. And I thought, something like this can exist. Everything that appeals to me personally exists as an animated show that feels perfect. And I loved it. It's like, obviously, we all grow up watching cartoons at some point, like Disney movies or SpongeBob or whatever else. But this was the thing that made me want to do this. And I've been drawing all my life too. I'm a big Sonic fan, so my sketchbooks were full of Sonic fan art. And not too long after I got into anime, this was the one that made me think, oh, this is like something that I want to attain someday. One of my bucket list career paths is to one day work on an anime in some capacity. I've still not done it, but it doesn't feel as out of reach anymore as it may have once did. And when it comes to education, so I studied at the Savannah College of Art and Design. That's a school that is in Savannah, Georgia in the United States. They have a campus in Atlanta, which is, for all intents and purposes, that's kind of my hometown. I lived in Atlanta most of my life at this point. And yeah, I went to the campus there. I actually still live in the town where the campus is. And it's great. You know, anybody who feels like studying abroad in America, that might be, to my understanding, the most reputable school for learning the arts, especially animation. A lot of friends that graduated with me, they ended up working for Disney, for Marvel, for game studios, like I forgot the studio's name, but they made Brawlhalla, which is a fighting game. One of my friends I used to work with works on that game now. I got friends who work at Warner Brothers, all people who were in the same graduating class as me. But, you know, that also comes from a lot of work ethic. It's not just about going to school. You gotta really be in there, right? You gotta lock in, as the kids say. And yeah, just do your best. Take feedback from professors if you take the route of like a structured animation course. Take their feedback. Never take it personally, because I did sometimes. don't do it. They're only trying to help you improve your craft. Any feedback that you get is always going to be like that. They're not trying to attack you, they're not trying to judge you, they just want you to be better at what you're trying to learn how to do. I hope that answers your question. Oh, who was first?
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just because in the videos you showed me it says like A, and in the one you made there's also said like a K, and it's like those lines that's like timing and stuff. Like
that is an awesome
how
question.
do you know where to place them?
That is an awesome
and what
question.
does this mean?
Yeah. So yeah, A in this terminology, they use different letters in Japan, but that just means basically the key frame drawing. Or in any of mine, let's go to one of my examples. Yeah, those K's that are showing up. So when I draw those are the key poses. Like those are these, right? So when I'm done with those and I know that I'm moving on to the next step, I'll then label them all with a circle K. So I don't lose track of them when I'm doing the other drawings that like go in between them. And then sometimes you might see one that says like B. B means breakdown. So I label my drawings like that to make it easier for me to feel organized when I'm going through the process, and also for other animators who might jump in to help assist me with a scene. Because sometimes one person will do the key drawings and someone else will do the in-betweens. And they'll need like these little timing charts that kind of tell you the spacing of how the drawings are going to go, so that it's easier for somebody who isn't the original person to understand their intention with the animation, and they can help them finish it. And that's kind of like a leftover from the days of when they used to animate on paper, and you literally had to keep organized like literal physical pieces of paper and what order they were going to be in. So you had to number them too, which I don't do because I work digitally. Let's see how much time we still got. Yeah, this is great. We have 15 more minutes. Hello.
Hi, what would you say are like some good exercises to kind of, develop the skills that show there, the basics?
If you ever take like an organized course, they will show you the simplest possible examples of what you can do. And the one that they taught me was, let's say you're doing squash and stretch. Really, most of them can be done with what's called it's the bouncing ball exercise. If you animate a ball bouncing up and down, or bouncing it in an arc until it reaches the end and it stops bouncing, that's a really good way to get started understanding how this works. Because when the ball reaches like the bottom of the floor, it'll squish a little bit, and then it'll bounce back up, and it'll stretch out, and it's going through an arc. So the bouncing ball is great. We have other assignments like where we do flour sacks, where it's like you got like a little pillow thing that'll just like kind of like move around with its own weight. So you get a feel for giving something a sense of weight and dimensionality. I guess if you look up animation exercises, you'll find like visual examples of what I mean. Because I hate just describing it, and it's like it makes sense in my mind, but I hope that kind of gives you a place to start. Hey, all right, cool. Hey, in the back.
Do you have any tips for how to study effectively?
How to study effectively. Put on some music by Nujabes. No, so it's really tough, right? Because our brains all work differently. Some people will do better from like having nothing on in the background sound-wise and just locking into whatever they're like studying or trying to make in dead silence. I cannot do that. I have ADHD. And anybody, so you kind of just have to try and see like if background noise helps you do things more effectively, or if it doesn't, experiment with both. And when it comes to just like finding a good structured approach to studying things, well, I guess I've never really been asked this question before, but if you can try to make some kind of like piece of work that focuses on being really good at one thing, like one of these things, and really focus on that, you will, as the process goes, realize that you're beginning to understand the other principles in the meantime, because they all work hand in hand with each other. Do things that are simple. Don't start with, I'm going to animate my OC slaying a dragon or something. Don't start there. Do something a lot simpler than that, and work your way up as you build your confidence. Don't overwhelm yourself. Don't let your dream project be your first project. We all just have something, right? But we use that to our advantage. We try to just be confident with whatever it is that we've got, and we make the best of it. I think it's one of the most welcoming industries. Like, when you're a creative person, and I mean this as endearingly as possible, it's highly likely that you have some kind of neurodivergency, and I think that is a good thing. Creativity is just overflowing in people like us. So I just, yeah, I think we deal with it well. We're a very welcoming field when it comes to that, because it all just comes down to how creative you are, and we will accommodate for whatever it is that you personally have. At least where it is where I'm at. I think my company, Spindle Horse Tunes, who makes the cartoons I work on, we're all great about that. Yep.
Do you think it's a necessity to have an animation degree?
No.
Okay.
Okay. When you're applying for jobs, all they care about is your portfolio.
Yeah.
Your demo reel, or if you have a resume and things that you've worked on already, that helps too. But all anyone cares about seeing is a visual video of things that you've already made. If they think that looks cool, that's all that matters. I know people who never went to college ever, who are they became leads at fields that they were in. It all depends on just, man, you guys should really come to my other panel about working in animation on Sunday, I believe it is, because I talk about this a lot. How, you can get a degree, you can, get professional training, you can get this, whatever. It's beneficial to do that for its own reasons, but by no means is it mandatory or necessary. That's a good question. Thank you. We have time for a couple more. We got 7 more minutes. There.
About getting what's called, I'm not sure that the question I've been asked before about procrastination.
Procrastination?
I get easy distracted with my phone.
Yeah, we all do it. Man, when you find out the answer to that question, let me know. I am horrible about that. But I guess the best thing that you can do, if you have a task in front of you, if you have something that you know you have to do, what is the easiest thing that you can do, in that task? What is the thing that you can turn your brain off and do? Do that first. And then the second easiest thing, do that. Work your way up to what the most intimidating thing might be. That is one way to do it. Or if you just have a moment of inspiration and you're just I'm in it, I'm locked in, do the hardest thing first. So it depends on your mood, right? And if you're just my drive is so low, I have no motivation, but I have to do this, do the easy part first. I think it's called constructive procrastination. They teach it to you in other things in school, but it definitely applies to creative work also. Hey.
Yes, as you said, the animation industry is very cutthroat.
Yeah.
So how do you get through and get motivation when there's no jobs and they don't take your portfolios and you're just getting started out and nobody understands what you're trying to do or something, when you feel like you're not getting acknowledged as an artist? And sometimes, I know I have heard this before, that if you're not working as an artist, it can sometimes be hard to feel like an artist.
So this is the one thing in life where I kind of feel like social media is the answer, because even though social media and this kind of mindset that we get into about big numbers and feeling valid based on how big those numbers are, that is a bit of a challenge and a downside to it. But what social media can be great for is exposing yourself completely on your own. Because people will notice if you persevere, if you keep making things, and you keep releasing things to the world. The more you do that on your own, and the more you stick to it, the more you'll be seen by something, whether it's a big studio, or a smaller project, or a group of people who want to involve you in something that they're doing. Any project that you can take on, even if it's a really small one, try to do that, because that builds your portfolio.
So can I pull on that, because that is a bit right now with Meta and everything going on in the world, the social media platforms are scattering around right now. A lot of artists are going off Instagram because of the AI generation that is going on there.
Yeah.
So is there any like sites you would recommend or platforms you would recommend? For the future?
Blue Sky's pretty good. I know it's like kind of it's still getting there as far as like the amount of people on it. I still use Twitter. I refuse to call it the other thing that they call it now. And you know, it's because it's so popular and there's it's such a huge platform. You know, you can still have things seen on it. Generative AI does suck. But here's my opinion on how that affects anybody who's working in animation. I know that's not exactly your question, but I still want to address that. I don't think that technology is ever going to replace what we do. Even if it may seem like there's a threat of that, I genuinely don't think so, because animation, making things move in a sense that feels very like handmade, it can't do that. Even I've seen some like AI generated like imitations of 3D movies like Pixar and DreamWorks and stuff, and it looks like garbage because it doesn't look like man-made. It looks like one image is moving at the same frame rate all the time, and it looks very uncanny and not appealing at all. People will see that and they'll scroll away from it. They won't be amazed by that. They won't think, wow, that's cool. They'll think, oh, the computer did a thing, and they'll move on. It's just so, there's no substance. And like that is a fad that I believe will probably go away and that bubble is going to burst. But even if for whatever reason it sticks around and people continue to use it for other things, I don't think it doesn't scare me personally as an animator. It cannot, and I absolutely do not believe it can do this. It cannot iterate. You cannot give it notes. You can't tell it to change one thing without giving you a whole new picture. It doesn't, it's not a person. It can't receive feedback. It's worthless for something like this. It's a cheap parlor trick that, in my opinion and in my hopes, is going to phase out eventually, hopefully soon.